Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Lucas was always the kind of guy who didn't draw attention wherever he went, but earned respect through the quiet things he built. He lived in Glendale, an upper-middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado. He was 37, worked as a systems developer for a financial tech company, and handled almost all of his professional routine from home. He was disciplined, methodical, and reserved, with a practical intelligence that helped him solve problems calmly, even under pressure. He spent most of his time in front of the computer, dealing with code and technical requests, always with headphones on and his mind racing. He wasn't much of a social guy, but he valued quiet moments, simple dinners, and honest conversations with people he considered loyal. The most important person in that circle was Haley, his wife. Haley was 5 years younger and almost nothing like Lucas. Outgoing, spontaneous, and image-conscious, she worked as a professional makeup artist for social events, photo shoots, and influencers in the Denver metro area. Her schedule was flexible, and although her hours were irregular, she always gave notice when last-minute plans came up. Her client list was growing, her portfolio was gaining traction on Instagram, and she invested heavily in personal branding. She had a vibrant, colorful profile full of selfies, behind-the-scenes shots, and glowing reviews from satisfied clients. Even though their daily routines were very different, Lucas and Haley balanced each other out in their relationship. They had a well-kept home, not overly luxurious but everything in its place. They'd been living together for 8 years, didn't have kids, and rarely talked about it. Both seemed content with the life they'd built. The couple was especially close to 2 friends, Jared and Olivia. They lived just a few blocks away, also in Glendale, in a house similar to Lucas and Haley's, which made frequent get-togethers easy. Jared was a physical education teacher at a well-established private school in the area. Tall, outgoing, and charismatic, he was the kind of person who made friends easily. He had a good reputation among students' parents and was involved in local sports initiatives. Olivia, on the other hand, worked as an events coordinator at a reputable pediatric clinic. She organized vaccination campaigns, social outreach programs, and corporate events focused on children's health, so she maintained an extremely careful image, both online and off. They'd been married for 6 years and didn't have children. They had an active social life, enjoyed hosting friends, and valued the bond they'd built with a small, trusted circle over the years. The friendship between the 2 couples was long-standing and solid. They'd met by chance at a year-end gathering hosted by a mutual neighbor, and the connection was instant. After that first meeting, invitations started coming regularly. Double dates on Sundays, Friday dinners, group binge-watching sessions, weekend trips to the mountains. When they weren't together in person, they stayed in touch through chat groups, shared memes, and inside jokes. It was the kind of friendship built on trust, time, and small, everyday moments. In every way, there was a sense of partnership, intimacy, and loyalty. Lucas trusted Jared like a brother. Haley said Olivia was like an older sister, even though Olivia was younger than her. Nothing in the dynamic between the 4 signaled instability. There were no public arguments or noticeable crises. When one couple was late to a gathering, the others waited. When one was overwhelmed, the other helped out. It was a well-oiled machine that ran smoothly and quietly. Lucas, in particular, felt comfortable with this stable social routine. He thought that despite the chaos of adult life, he'd managed to build a small, safe world with the right people. And for a long time, everything seemed to confirm that. The first thing Lucas noticed was the timing. Haley, who usually scheduled her appointments with some predictability, started leaving at different times than usual, almost always in the middle of the afternoon. Sometimes she said she had to meet a client at the mall, other times she mentioned buying specific products, like imported foundation or a new set of professional brushes. At first, Lucas didn't suspect anything. He figured it was just a busier phase in her work, especially since she said her client list had grown. But as the weeks passed, small details began to stand out from the routine he knew so well. The first clear sign was how she started getting ready. Even when she said she was just going to the mall, she'd show up wearing full makeup, bolder clothes than usual, and always heavily perfumed. Lucas didn't comment, but he made a mental note. Then came the delays. Haley had always been punctual, but on 2 occasions she arrived home well past her expected time, blaming traffic. Lucas listened and accepted it, but he began to feel an uneasiness he couldn't quite explain. Her responses felt different. There was a certain emotional distance in her words, like her mind was somewhere else, even when she was sitting across from him. There was one night in particular that stood out. They were watching a movie together when Haley got a notification on her phone and smiled to herself. Lucas asked what it was, and she said it was a friend sending a funny video. But she didn't show him. She put the phone in her pocket and changed the subject. It was a small gesture, almost unnoticeable, but it planted a real doubt. From then on, Lucas started paying closer attention to every detail. Haley's behavior began to seem calculated. Her excuses were too ready, her smiles too rehearsed, and she had an exaggerated control over her phone, always face down on the table, always tucked away when she went to the bathroom. Despite the growing unease, Lucas wasn't the kind of man who blew up or created conflict without cause. He didn't want to accuse without proof. He didn't want to be unfair. But he also couldn't keep ignoring the feeling that something was off. The idea of possible betrayal began to take shape, even though he tried to push it away every time it surfaced. He started sleeping poorly, working with less focus, and feeling distracted during the day. He began recalling old conversations, moments when Haley seemed emotionally distant. Everything took on a new tone, and that tone was gray. It was during a late night, sitting alone in his home office, that Lucas made his decision. He'd read about discrete tracking devices and, after doing a bit more research, bought an AirTag online. It arrived 2 days later. Small, lightweight, and easy to hide. He waited for the right moment. When Haley left for an event and left her purse in the bedroom, Lucas took the chance. He slipped the device into a side compartment, close to the inner seam. Done. From that moment on, he would have real-time access to her location without having to ask or rely solely on her word. But along with the decision came the weight. Lucas felt like, in a way, he was already betraying the trust of their marriage by monitoring his wife. The pain of having reached that point was real. He didn't want to catch her in anything. Deep down, he wanted to find out he was wrong, that it was all just unfounded paranoia. That her evasive answers had a reason. That the delays were real. That the Haley he knew was still there. But even as he wished for that, he knew he needed the truth. Because what was eating at him most was doubt. And at that moment, doubt was eating away at everything. On Thursday of that week, shortly after lunch, Haley came into Lucas's office with a soft smile and said she needed to go to the mall. She needed to buy a new foundation for an event she had on Saturday and wanted to check out some new lipsticks from a brand that had just launched. Lucas nodded casually, closed his laptop, and asked if she wanted him to drive her. Haley declined with a quick kiss on the forehead, said she'd rather go alone, and left, taking with her the purse where the AirTag was hidden. Only then, after hearing the front door close, did Lucas pick up his phone, open the app, and watch the location update a few minutes later. At first, the route made sense. Haley headed toward downtown, passing the avenues that led to the main shopping centers in the area. Lucas watched in silence, his phone resting on the table, trying not to jump to conclusions. But then the dot began to veer off. Instead of continuing on the road that led directly to the mall, Haley turned onto a side street, then another, and another, until the route headed toward a more isolated part of town, near the city's edge, where stores were sparse and car traffic noticeably thin. The dot stopped in front of a single-story building, with a parking spot in front of each door. Lucas zoomed in on the map and saw the name, a discreet motel, with a plain facade and heavy curtains over the windows. The kind of place someone would choose precisely to avoid being seen. His pulse quickened. His mouth went dry. He checked the clock and realized only 20 minutes had passed since she left home. This wasn't a coincidence. And it definitely had nothing to do with makeup. He stood up, grabbed his car keys, and left without thinking. He drove in silence, the phone mounted on the dashboard showing her real-time location. He was going after a confirmation he didn't want but needed. He arrived at the location, parked discreetly across the street, his car partially hidden by a tree, his view fixed on the motel's side entrance. Haley's car was there, parked in the second spot to the left. The place was quiet, muffled, with little movement visible. Lucas turned off the engine and sat still. Time seemed frozen. He checked the clock every 5 minutes, but the hands felt like they were mocking him. His heart pounded, but his body felt cold. His mind scrambled for explanations that didn't involve the worst, but every alternative seemed foolish in that moment. He knew. He could feel it. But he still needed to see. After just over an hour, the door of the room where Haley's car was parked finally opened. First came Olivia, adjusting her hair with a relaxed expression. She was wearing a blouse Lucas had seen before, but looser this time. Behind her came Jared, smiling as he said something Olivia responded to with a light touch on his shoulder. Finally, Haley stepped out. She rummaged through her purse like she was looking for something ordinary, quietly laughing at what she'd just heard. The three walked together toward Haley's car, like they'd just finished a casual lunch, showing no sign of guilt or discomfort. Lucas watched them from his car window, unable to believe it. He felt like something inside him had quietly shattered. It wasn't just his wife with someone else. It was all three of them. His wife and his two closest friends. Walking away together after what could only have been an intimate meeting. No explanation. No logic. Just the raw pain of undeniable proof. And for the first time since he started suspecting, Lucas didn't feel doubt. He felt certainty. And in that moment, certainty hurt more than any assumption ever could. Lucas couldn't look away from the three of them. The image of Haley, Olivia, and Jared side by side, laughing in front of a motel room, seemed too absurd to be real. But it was. They were right there, just meters away, chatting like they'd just left a normal dinner among friends. Lucas's body was frozen, but his mind was boiling. He took a deep breath, opened the car door forcefully, and crossed the street, his sharp footsteps cutting through the parking lot's silence. The three hadn't seen him yet. They were distracted, about to get into Haley's car. It was only when he stopped on the other side of the parking spot that Haley turned. The visual impact was immediate. Haley froze. The smile still forming on her lips vanished. Olivia took a step back, as if her body betrayed her surprise. Jared narrowed his eyes, trying to figure out if this was coincidence or a trap. No one said a word. The air grew thick. Lucas stared at the three, breathing heavily, but didn't shout. He just looked at his wife and said, his voice trembling with outrage but steady in tone, "Is this real? Were all three of you together in there? Is this what you meant when you said you were going to the mall?" Haley didn't answer. Her mouth opened instinctively, but no words came out. Jared tried to step forward, as if wanting to explain before being accused, but Lucas raised his hand, stopping any movement. "Don't touch me. I want to hear it from Haley. Only her. Is this true? Have you been meeting both of them here in secret?" Olivia cleared her throat, nervous. "Lucas, it's not what you think." He shot back immediately. "Not? Then explain what it is." "A motel, the three of you walking out together, smiling. Because to me, it's pretty clear." Silence returned. Haley finally took a deep breath and answered, her voice low, almost a whisper. "It's true. We've been meeting for a few months. Together. All three of us. It's been consensual between us. Lucas stood frozen. It wasn't just the physical betrayal, it was the level of planning, repetition, and broken trust. He looked at Jared. Did you know I had no idea? Jared nodded slowly. So did Olivia. The betrayal wasn't just the act, it was the secret the three of them had maintained, as if Lucas's pain was just a minor detail in their equation. He didn't ask anything else. He didn't want to hear more excuses. The betrayal didn't need explanation, it was already fully exposed in that scene. After a few seconds of heavy silence, Lucas took a step back, looked at Haley with tears in his eyes, and said quietly, but sharply, "This won't come cheap for any of you." He turned and walked away. He got home without saying a word. Still with the image of the three of them burned into his mind, he started going through the cabinets. He pulled out Haley's clothes, her toiletries from the bathroom, even the documents they kept together in the safe. In silence, he packed 2 large suitcases and left them by the door, like an irreversible verdict. When Haley arrived, she found the bedroom locked. Lucas, on the other side, spoke in a cold, firm voice. She had until the next morning to leave, because the marriage was over right there. The next morning, Haley desperately tried to convince him. She cried, begged, held his hand in the kitchen, swearing she could change, pleading for just one more chance. Lucas looked at her with eyes heavy with pain, but didn't give in. Without raising his voice, he just pointed to the suitcases by the door and said it was time to go. The silence that followed hurt more than any scream. Haley left, carrying the weight of rejection and guilt. Soon after, Lucas drove to the local courthouse and filed for legal separation. He attached all the necessary documents and requested urgent processing. He returned home with his soul in pieces, but certain he could never go back. Within a week, Lucas posted a statement on social media. He wrote calmly, without insults, but clearly laid out what he'd discovered. He said his wife had been secretly involved with their closest couple friends without his knowledge, and that this betrayal involved planned meetings and repeated lies. He tagged several local influencers Haley used to work with. He didn't call for cancellation or revenge, he just wanted them to know who they were dealing with. The post spread quickly. Within days, it was circulating in local groups, city gossip pages, and relationship discussion forums. Haley's name became linked to the scandal. And along with her, Jared and Olivia also came under scrutiny. The fallout touched everything. When Lucas decided to put the house on the market, the neighborhood was already whispering in corners. The realtor, unaware of the details, mentioned hearing comments about some drama involved. Every scheduled showing was cancelled last minute. Offers that came in were far below market value. In the end, Lucas accepted an offer $30,000 below the original appraisal. He didn't care about profit, appreciation, or negotiation anymore. He just wanted to close that door and never look back. What had once been a home built in quiet partnership was now just an empty house, stripped of meaning, marked by the public exposure of a betrayal no one could forget. Lucas's social media post had an immediate effect. It only took a few shares for the story to gain momentum in local circles. The account was straightforward, not exaggerated, but deeply moving: a man betrayed by his wife and his 2 best friends, who'd been secretly involved behind his back. What stood out was how calmly he described everything, without resorting to drama. That made people feel comfortable sharing, commenting, and taking sides. Within days, it seemed like the whole town knew what had happened. Haley's reputation was the first to collapse. Clients canceled makeup appointments scheduled weeks in advance. Some didn't even give explanations, just disappeared. Others were direct, saying they didn't want their image associated with someone involved in that kind of scandal. The backlash was so strong that even local brands she partnered with ended their relationships. Messages of praise and booking requests stopped coming. Her professional profile lost engagement, and under emotional and financial pressure, Haley deactivated her account. With no prospects for recovery, she decided to leave Denver. She moved in with her sister in Grand Junction, where she started doing occasional work outside the beauty industry. Jared and Olivia also faced consequences. The school where Jared taught decided to temporarily suspend him after internal pressure. The administration avoided official statements, but it was clear that the public exposure of his involvement with his friend's wife undermined parents' trust. The final straw came when a group of parents filed a formal complaint, questioning the school's ethical standards. Jared resigned before he could be fired. Olivia, meanwhile, faced quiet resistance at the pediatric clinic. Some mothers canceled attendance at events she organized. Others, when they saw her in the hallways, looked away or whispered. After a direct conversation with management, where they made it clear her image no longer aligned with the clinic's values, Olivia also chose to leave. With their social lives destroyed and privacy compromised, the couple decided to sell their house and move to Portland. There, they hoped to start over in anonymity, far from the judgmental eyes they could no longer avoid, not even at the grocery store. The property was sold in a rush, with no room for negotiation. The amount they received was below market value, but it was the price to disappear from the map as quickly as possible. Lucas, on the other hand, found a kind of renewal in the chaos. After the separation, he left Denver for Austin, Texas. He landed a new job at a promising startup, rented a small apartment, and focused on rebuilding his routine with more independence and less outside noise. In the first months, he still carried the raw pain of betrayal, but over time it began to fade. What hurt the most wasn't the end of the marriage, but the betrayal orchestrated by the people he trusted most. And it was precisely that pain that shaped his new chapter, more aware, more selective, more loyal to himself than to any expectation. Over time, he realized that not all betrayals are dramatic. Some are cold, calculated, made of silence and fake smiles. That the real enemies are often the ones who sit at your table, laugh at your jokes, and toast alongside you. But he also understood that when the truth comes out, it destroys what needs to be destroyed. And what's left after that is only what truly matters. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.